I sat in the small hospital room, the steady beeping of the monitors a constant reminder of the battle my mother had been fighting for months. The scent of antiseptic clung to the air, and despite the warm afternoon sun streaming through the window, the room felt cold. She lay on the hospital bed, her face pale, her once strong hands resting on the white sheets. I reached out and took one, squeezing it gently. She opened her eyes and gave me a tired smile. "You've done so much for me, my love," she whispered, her voice weak but filled with warmth. I forced a smile. "Of course, Mama. I'd do anything for you." And I had. When she was diagnosed with a serious illness, I became her rock. I juggled work, hospital visits, and medical bills without hesitation. Every spare moment was spent by her side, making sure she had the best care possible. But despite my efforts, I knew there was something else weighing on her mind. Something unspoken. She sighed, shifting slightly. "You're a good daughter. A wonderful daughter." Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought she might say what had been lingering in the air between us. But instead she squeezed my hand. "Go home and rest, dear. You look exhausted." I wanted to argue, but I saw the concern in her eyes. Reluctantly, I nodded. "Okay, Mama. I'll be back in the morning." As I stepped out of the hospital, the city lights flickered around me. I should have felt relief. Her condition was stable for now, but something gnawed at me. There was something she wasn't telling me, and deep down I feared I already knew what it was. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital with a cup of her favorite chamomile tea. She smiled when she saw me, though there was a weariness behind her eyes that never seemed to fade. "You're spoiling me," she murmured as I handed her the warm cup. I sat down beside her. "That's my job." She took a slow sip and exhaled deeply. "You've always been so responsible, taking care of everyone." I smiled, though I felt a familiar pang in my chest. It was true, I had always been the one who put others first. My mother's health, my job, my family's needs. There was never room to think of what I wanted. She set the cup down on the bedside table and turned to me with that knowing look of hers. "How is your sister?" And there it was. I knew this moment was coming. I had been avoiding it, pretending not to notice the way my mother's voice softened whenever she spoke about my older sister, Liana. "She's fine," I said carefully. "Busy as always." Mama nodded slowly. "She always had big dreams." I said nothing. Liana had always been the golden child, the one who pursued her passions while I held everything else together. She had lived abroad for years, returning only when Mama got sick. Even then, she visited briefly before leaving again, promising to come back soon. Mama reached for my hand. "She needs stability, you know. She's been moving so much, never settling down." I stiffened slightly. "Mama, I just think," she continued, "that it would be nice if she had a home of her own, a place where she could finally stay. You're so good with these things, my love. Maybe," she hesitated, choosing her words carefully, "maybe you could help her. Just like you helped me." My throat tightened. There it was. The expectation I had felt looming over me. She was waiting for me to buy Liana an apartment. I forced a smile, though inside I felt the walls closing in. "We'll talk about it later, Mama. Just focus on getting better." She smiled, satisfied for now. But I knew this conversation was far from over. And I knew deep down that my answer might break her heart. As the weeks passed, my mother's health improved, albeit slowly. I visited her every day, our conversations weaving through memories, hopes, and the occasional silence that spoke louder than words. But the unspoken request regarding Liana hung over me like a storm cloud. One Sunday afternoon, I decided to confront the issue head-on. I drove out to the small town where Liana lived, hoping to understand her situation better. Her place was modest, a quaint little rental tucked away from the main street. She greeted me warmly, her laughter echoing in the narrow hallway as she pulled me in for a tight hug. "Sis, it's been too long," she said, leading me inside. The walls were adorned with photographs from her travels, capturing the essence of the free-spirited life she had led. We sat at her tiny kitchen table, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the room. "How's Mama?" she asked, her eyes clouding with concern. "She's getting better," I assured her. "But she worries about you." Liana's smile faltered. "Me? I'm fine. Just figuring things out." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation. Mama thinks you need stability. A place of your own. She hesitated, the coffee cup halfway to her lips. We've talked about this before. But you know I can't afford to buy anything right now. The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded with meaning. I glanced down at my hands, tracing the rim of my own cup. She wants me to help you. To buy you an apartment. Liana's eyes widened, and she set her cup down with a soft clink. What? No, I can't let you do that. You've done so much already. Taking care of Mama, juggling your work, everything. I know, I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. But it's what she wants. And I don't know how to tell her no. For a moment Liana was silent, her gaze fixed on the worn tabletop. Then she reached across, covering my hand with hers. You don't have to do this for me. I don't want to be another burden on you. It's not about being a burden, I replied, my throat tight. It's about making her happy. Liana's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I've always admired you, you know, how you handle everything. But you deserve happiness too. You've sacrificed so much for everyone else. Hearing those words felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Because she was right, I had sacrificed. My dreams, my time, my energy. All poured into holding our family together. And now, this silent expectation to provide even more. I stayed at Liana's for hours, talking, reminiscing, and sharing our fears and dreams. When I finally left, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving a trail of fiery orange and pink. Driving back, I thought about my own life. About how much of myself I had set aside for the sake of others. The road stretched out before me, a winding path that seemed to go on forever. I knew the decision I had to make would change everything. But for the first time in years I wondered what would my life look like if I put myself first. The hospital was quieter than usual when I arrived the next morning. My mother was sitting up in bed, her hair neatly combed, and her eyes brightened when she saw me. There's my girl, she said warmly, reaching for my hand as I sat down beside her. You look tired, sweetheart. Are you sleeping enough? I forced a smile. I'm fine, Mama. She studied me carefully, her gaze full of quiet understanding. Then, as if sensing my hesitation, she asked softly, Did you see your sister? I nodded. I visited her yesterday. Her expression lit up with something between relief and hope. And? What did she say? I hesitated, my fingers tightening around the edge of her blanket. She's doing okay. She's managing. Mama sighed. She says that, but she's never really settled, has she? Always moving, always searching. A home would change that. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on me. Mama, do you think it's my responsibility to make that happen? She tilted her head, her frail fingers tightening around mine. No, my love, I don't expect anything. But I know you. You always take care of the ones you love. That was the problem. I had spent my entire life taking care of others. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. She nodded. If it were me, the one who needed a home, the one who had spent years moving from place to place, would you ask Liana to buy me an apartment? Silence. A flicker of something passed across her face, something like realization or guilt. Finally she exhaled. Liana has always been different. She's never had your sense of stability, your strength. She needs help. I nodded slowly, hearing the words she didn't say out loud. Liana needed help. I was the one who could provide it. And deep down, my mother had never expected Liana to do the same for me. I felt a lump rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I don't know if I can do it, Mama. She smiled softly, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. Whatever you decide, I'll understand. But would she? Would she really? Or would this be another unspoken disappointment? Another silent burden I would carry? As I left the hospital, my mind raced. For the first time, I was beginning to see things clearly. I had been the strong one, the responsible one, but at what cost? And if I went through with this, if I gave up another piece of myself for Liana, would there ever be anything left for me? The next few days passed in a blur. I went to work, visited my mother, and pretended that everything was fine. But inside a storm was brewing. I had spent years living in quiet sacrifice, always choosing responsibility over desire, duty over dreams. And now I was at a crossroads. One evening, after another long visit at the hospital, I found myself parked outside my apartment, staring blankly at the darkened windows. The exhaustion weighed on me like a lead blanket. But before I could step inside, my phone buzzed. Liana. I hesitated before answering. Hey, are you home? I was thinking of stopping by. There was something in her voice, hesitation, maybe even guilt. Yeah, I said, sighing. Come over. 15 minutes later, she was sitting across from me on my couch, a mug of tea in her hands. She looked around the small but cozy space, smiling. I always loved your apartment. It feels lived in. I raised an eyebrow. What does that mean? She let out a soft laugh. I don't know. I guess I mean it feels like a home. Something permanent. I watched her closely. And that's something you want? She exhaled, tracing her fingers along the rim of her mug. Honestly, I don't know. I've spent so much of my life chasing experiences, running from place to place, and now I feel like I should want stability, but I don't know if I'm ready for it. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. Mama wants me to buy you an apartment. Her eyes snapped up to mine, wide with shock. She what? She thinks it would help you settle down. She's been waiting for me to do it. Liana's expression shifted into something unreadable. She set the mug down on the coffee table, leaning forward. Did she tell you to? Or did you offer? I let out a humorless laugh. Does it make a difference? She sighed, shaking her head. I can't believe she would ask that of you. She didn't ask outright, I admitted. But it was there. In the way she spoke about you, in the way she looked at me, like she just knew I would do it. Liana rubbed her temples. That's not fair to you. I wanted to believe that she meant it, but a part of me wondered if I had offered, would she have refused? I took a deep breath. Liana, tell me the truth. If I did this, if I bought you a place, would it change anything? Would it make you stay? She hesitated, and in that hesitation I had my answer. I don't know, she said finally. I'd like to think so. But I can't promise. I let her words sink in. Mama wanted me to believe that stability could be given like a gift, that if I handed Liana a home, she would magically become the person my mother wanted her to be. But that wasn't how life worked. And deep down I knew it. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaustion creeping into my voice. Liana, I can't do it. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. What? I can't buy you an apartment, I said, more firmly this time. I love you and I want you to have everything you need, but this isn't the answer. For a moment she was silent. Then slowly she nodded. I get it. I searched her face for anger, disappointment, resentment, anything. But all I saw was understanding. You're not mad? I asked hesitantly. She let out a small, sad laugh. No. Honestly, I was scared you would say yes. I blinked. What? She leaned back against the couch, folding her arms. If you had done it, if you had actually bought me a place, I don't think I could have lived with the guilt. I don't deserve that kind of sacrifice from you. I let out a shaky breath, my heart pounding. Then why didn't you say that to Mama? She looked away. Because I wanted to believe it would be that easy. That a place could fix me. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally she spoke again. You've always taken care of everyone, but who takes care of you? I swallowed hard, not trusting myself to answer. She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. You deserve to put yourself first, just this once. I nodded, feeling something inside me shift. Something I had been holding onto for far too long. For the first time I felt like I was choosing myself. And it felt right. The next morning, I visited Mama earlier than usual. The hospital room was bathed in soft golden light, and she was already awake, gazing out the window. She turned when she heard me enter, smiling. You're here early, my love. I sat beside her, my heart heavy with the conversation I knew we were about to have. I needed to talk to you. She reached for my hand, patting it gently. About Liana? I nodded, my stomach tightening. Mama, I can't buy her an apartment. Her smile faltered. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see the flicker of disappointment in her eyes before she composed herself. She exhaled softly, as if bracing herself. I see. I forced myself to hold her gaze. I love Liana, but this isn't the answer. A home won't change her, won't make her stay. She needs to find that on her own. Mama was silent for a long time. Then slowly she said, I never meant to put this on you. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. But you did. She looked down at our joined hands. I just wanted to know she would be okay. That someone would look after her when I'm gone. Her words hit me like a blow to the chest. I knew she was getting better, but she still spoke as though her time was running out. I squeezed her hand. Mama, Liana isn't alone. She has me and she has herself. She'll be okay. Mama studied me, searching my face. And you? Will you be okay? I smiled even as my throat tightened. I think I will be. She sighed, nodding slowly. I just worry about you both. You're my girls. I know. She gave me a tired smile. You've done so much for me, my love. More than I could ever ask for. And I know, she hesitated as if reluctant to admit it, that sometimes I've leaned on you too much. I didn't say anything, but I felt my eyes burn with unshed tears. Finally, she whispered, Thank you for telling me the truth. And that was it. No anger. No guilt tripping. Just quiet acceptance. It wasn't the conversation I had feared, but it still left a weight in my chest. I knew she was disappointed, but for once I wasn't willing to carry that burden. For the first time I had chosen myself. And now I just had to figure out what that meant. The following days felt different. Lighter, maybe. Or perhaps that was just me, finally realizing how much I had been carrying all these years. I still visited Mama every day, still held her hand, still made sure she had everything she needed. But something in our dynamic had shifted. She didn't mention Liana's apartment again, and I didn't bring it up. Instead, we talked about other things. Memories of when I was a little girl. Of the time she would braid my hair while telling me stories of her own childhood. Of the way my father used to make us both laugh when he was still alive. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was speaking to my mother, not just as her caretaker, not as the responsible daughter who had to hold everything together, but as myself. Liana, too, had changed in small but noticeable ways. She had always been flighty, but lately she seemed more grounded. More present. She called Mama more often. She visited when she could. And though she still had plans to leave, she no longer spoke about it like she was running away from something. One evening we sat on my balcony, a bottle of wine between us. I'm proud of you, she said, looking at me over the rim of her glass. I laughed softly. For what? For finally standing up for yourself. For not letting Mama push you into something you didn't want. I swirled my wine, watching the deep red liquid catch the city lights. It's strange. I thought saying no would feel like breaking something. But it didn't. It just freed me. She nodded. That's because you were never supposed to carry that weight alone. I studied her carefully. And you? What's next for you? She smiled, but it wasn't the restless, searching smile she used to have. I don't know yet. But for the first time I don't feel lost. I just needed to stop looking for something to anchor me, and figure out how to stand on my own. I reached for her hand, squeezing it. You will. She smiled, squeezing back. For years I had thought I was the only one holding our family together. But maybe, just maybe, we had all been learning how to hold ourselves up. And that was enough. A week later, Mama was finally discharged from the hospital. I had spent the entire morning making sure everything at home was perfect for her return: fresh sheets, warm soup waiting on the stove, and the softest blankets I could find. When I brought her inside, she sighed in relief, sinking into her favorite armchair. It feels good to be home, she murmured, looking around the living room as if seeing it for the first time. I smiled, sitting beside her. You'll feel even better after you get some rest. She reached for my hand, her grip weaker than it used to be but still full of warmth. I need you to know something, she said softly. I met her gaze, waiting. I love you and I am so proud of you, she whispered. Not just for taking care of me, but for knowing when to take care of yourself. Something in my chest tightened. For so long I had been afraid of disappointing her. Afraid of saying no when she needed me. But now I realized she had never wanted to trap me in that role. She had just been scared. And in her fear, she had leaned on me the only way she knew how. I squeezed her hand. I love you too, Mama. That evening Liana came over with dinner. We sat together at the kitchen table, laughing, sharing stories, feeling Finally, like a family without the weight of expectation pressing down on us. After Mama went to bed, Liana lingered. I have something to tell you, she said, tucking her hair behind her ear. I found a place. I blinked. A place. She nodded. A small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it feels right. I signed the lease today. A strange mix of emotions swirled inside me. Relief, pride, and something close to disbelief. You're staying. She smiled. For now. I think I owe it to myself to try. I exhaled, feeling the last remnants of tension leave my body. I'm really happy for you. And I was. Because for the first time Liana was choosing stability. And for the first time I wasn't the one making it happen. A month had passed since Mama returned home. In that time life had settled into something I hadn't expected. Something peaceful. I still visited her every day, still helped with errands, but something had shifted. I was no longer carrying the weight of our family alone. Liana had stayed true to her word. She had moved into her own place. A small but cozy apartment in the heart of the city. She visited Mama regularly, called me often, and even found a steady job. For the first time she wasn't running. She was building something for herself. And me? For the first time in my life I had started asking myself what I wanted. One evening I sat on Mama's porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. She joined me wrapped in a soft shawl, a cup of tea in her hands. You seem different, she said after a while. I smiled. Different how? Lighter, she murmured, glancing at me with quiet understanding. Like you're finally breathing for yourself. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. Maybe I am. She set her tea down, folding her hands in her lap. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret it? She asked softly. Saying no. I thought about it for a moment. No, I admitted. I was scared that I would. That it would feel like I was letting you down. But instead it felt like freedom. Mama nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. I think I always knew you'd say no. I think I was even hoping you would. I turned to her in surprise. You were. She smiled faintly. I know what it's like to give too much of yourself, to feel like your purpose is tied to other people's needs. I spent my whole life taking care of your father, then you girls. And when I got sick I leaned on you because I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen to Liana. Afraid of what would happen to me. She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. But the truth is, I should have never expected you to fix everything. That wasn't fair to you. Tears pricked my eyes, but I held them back. Mama. She gave me a tired smile. I'm sorry, my love. A lump formed in my throat, and for a long time I couldn't speak. This was what I had wanted for so long, not just an apology but acknowledgement. And now that I had it, I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. I squeezed her hand back. I forgive you. We sat in comfortable silence after that, watching as the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon. For so long I had been afraid that choosing myself meant losing something. Losing my mother's love, losing Liana's trust, losing the sense of purpose I had built around being the one who held everything together. But I hadn't lost anything. Instead, I had gained something I never knew I needed. I had gained myself. And that was enough. The end.